Hey, it's Jeremy from jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy these videos, would like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. You also get access to a Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share tips, feedback, process, shop talk, and more. A digital archive where you can read my comic books online. And there are higher rewards and additional tiers, but $2 a month is the basic to get you in. If you would like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can become a subscriber to my free newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Comixology or Kindle, Comixology is now just Kindle. They absorbed them. Sorry, brain's still absorbing that big change to the industry. Anyway, head over to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It's a standalone psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can also pick up books like my most recent graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is an 8-issue series collected into 2 volumes. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, script excerpts, thumbnails, page layouts, character design, photo reference. I basically show you how I put the entire book together. So you can check out all of those. And if you go to the homepage of my YouTube channel, there are book flip-throughs. If you scroll down, there's a playlist that just has flip-throughs of all the books. You can see what's inside before you check them out. So now on to some drawing. See, Byron is in the chat already. The early bird gets the first comment. Good to see you. All right. So today I'm doing something a little bit different. I seem to be jumping around a lot in terms of projects, and I think this is one of the downsides of not having the script to my next comic book ready to go. But what I'm currently working on is I had an idea for a short story that I kind of want to do as an animatic, and it is a space story. So I was going to work on some character designs for the lead character. It is a female astronaut, and her name is May. She's named after the first African-American female astronaut, and Mae Jemison. So this character, I just named her May after that. It's not supposed to be Mae Jemison, but I'm naming the character in her honor. I see Art Stuff in the chat. How you doing, Art Stuff? Nice to see you. Thanks for dropping in. I still got my other banner up there. We can hide that. All right. Byron showing up in the chat. Welcoming everybody. So it's going to be May and her space dog, Sagan, named after Carl Sagan. So I was going to work on some character designs here. Although I did want to go back and look at another shot where I sort of had a very rough character design. And I think I want to take this thumbnail with me into the page as I'm starting to block the character out. So let me come in here, make a quick selection, grab this image. Copy. Go back out here. Paste. Hey, Sivan is in the chat. Travis in the chat. How you guys doing? Thanks for dropping by. Good to see you. We're working on some character designs. I'm going to do a short little. I'm not drawing a short animatic in this session, but I'm basically doing some storyboards for a short story that I was thinking more of an animation than as a comic book. So it's just a short story about an astronaut who gets locked out of her spacecraft. So what I have here is Wings World. coming in from Twitch. Good to see you. Thanks for popping by. Let's see here. And Amar says, hello, Jeremy. Was here before you started, but I'm on lurk mode. Hello to you all. Happy Sunday. I hear you, Amar. Continue the lurk. Sometimes I'm lurking on other people's streams, but I'll just have it up in the background, listening to it while I'm working. Hope you are being productive, making some progress in whatever your current endeavor is. So anyway, I just pulled up some reference, and what I searched for was 2023 spacesuits, because I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted her spacesuit to look like. I didn't necessarily want to make it exactly like contemporary astronaut spacesuits, because I didn't want to just kind of be beholden to that. But I didn't want to design something from scratch and say, all right, if I'm building a spacesuit from the ground up. Also because this whole thing is going to be rough. It's not going to be drawn like a fully detailed comic book. It's going to be much more of a storyboard style, loose and sketchy. Pretty similar to this rough sketch that I have here up on the screen. I don't plan to make it any more detailed than that. In fact, even this is more detailed than it should have. I need to pare this down and get it down to something loose and simple. But my idea in gathering reference was simply that I don't want to start from scratch, but I also don't want to be beholden to an existing design, having to try and accurately portray a spacesuit. So I thought, something that's, and I like these contemporary spacesuits, particularly at this bottom one. And the spacesuits are getting less baggy and more almost like a form-fitting, like what we would have imagined in the future. And let's see here. Wings World says, lurking as well. Watched you before, saw some great work. Thank you so much. I appreciate you watching, and thank you for the kind words. They also ask, is this Procreate? And yes, it is. I am drawing in Procreate. That is currently my digital weapon of choice. I've heard many great things about Clip Studio Paint, and I have the desktop version. I don't have the tablet version. And I don't really want to sign up for a subscription. But more importantly, I think it's really just a matter that everyone needs to use whatever app works best for them. And for me, I have found that I really, really enjoy the interface of Procreate. It feels the most intuitive of various, I haven't tried drawing in Photoshop for the iPad. I've heard some very unflattering things about it. And to be honest, I don't like drawing in Photoshop on desktop. Procreate feels like it has just the right amount of interface and controls, with also being kind of stripped down and kind of like you don't need to think too much. The controls are pretty intuitive. A lot like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with a program called Painter. It's Corel Draw Painter or Corel Painter, but they used to have a version that they would deliver, that they would package with early Wacom tablets. It was called Painter Classic, and it was like a super stripped down version of their actual full program, which when I've used the full Painter before, and way too many controls. It's hard for me to figure out how to get it to do what I want. But the simple version, the stripped down one that they gave away for free, I loved that. And Procreate reminds me very much of those controls. So let's see here. Amar says, do you plan to do the animation in Procreate as well? No, I think that once I'm done with it, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a simple animatic, and I'll probably use iMovie simply because all it's going to be is just timing it out. I don't have Premiere or Final Cut Pro. I don't need to do anything that elaborate. And I'm sure Toon Boom has built-in software to create timed animatics, but I don't see myself needing something as advanced as Toon Boom right away. This is more of just a short story idea that I wanted to do that I thought worked better in a visual, that worked better in time in terms of doing it like a storyboard than it would as a comic. So I'm just changing and playing with formats a little bit. I don't think it's going to lead to me completely shifting my workflow and doing everything as storyboards versus comics. But who knows? We'll see. It's just an experiment that I'm trying out. I mean, in the meantime, I'm still going to be working on my Greek mythology story that I plan to do next. So I'm going to kind of have multiple things going in the background as well. Let's see here. See Gary in the chat, buddy Gary Hodges rolling through. Hey man, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a good Sunday. You know, get some creative stuff done. Art stuff, I see your question, but that's going to require some quick thought. So let me just run through the rest of these. Let's see. Wings World says the settings for brushes can sometimes confuse me, but I just work with the basics. Yeah, you know, it's funny for Procreate. I went through all of the brushes that Procreate has, and I just made like little marks and shapes until I found the ones that I like, and then I took the brushes that I do like, and I just made a custom brush folder for the ones that I like. And I kind of do the same thing whenever somebody shows me a new brush pack, or for instance, I bought a digital charcoal brush pack from the artist Lane Brown, and there's a lot of great brushes in there, but I went through and I found like the 5 that I really like, and I just drag those to the top, and that's what I use in that brush pack. So let's see here. Amar says there's a storyboarder by Wonder Unit, which is free as well. Says you can import audio in the script as well. That is a good tip. Thank you. I'll have to check that out. Now, Art Stuff asked, just wondering what superpower you would want if you could choose. Well, I never feel like there is enough time. So I would probably, there's a few different ones. One would possibly be, you know, immortality or extremely long life. 2 would be the ability to slow down or freeze time. Or 3, and the one to me that actually I think is the most interesting, is if you're familiar with Jamie Madrox from X Factor and from the X-Men universe, he's multiple man. So he has the ability to break himself into a certain number of multiples. I don't know what his maximum is. It might be something like 100, but he breaks himself into different people. So like he'll physically like slam his hand against the wall or impact against something, and he turns into 2 people. And then each of those people can slam his hand into a wall, split into 4 people, so on and so forth. So multiple men. They can all go off, have different experiences, lead different lives, do all sorts of things, and then come back and re-merge. And when they reunify, he absorbs all of the memories, and he has this this gestalt, this unified memory of all of the different life experiences he's led as these separate bodies. So for somebody who would like to be able to spend time gaming and watching more TV and more movies, because I really don't watch that much TV or movies because I'm trying to spend time making artwork. But, you know, being able to spend lots of time hanging out with my wife, going on vacation, playing with my cats, hanging out with friends more. Like the idea of not having to choose, to be able to live all of the different experiences that make a life full and rich, that might be my number one superpower if I could pick one. To be or have the power set of multiple man. and just go and not have to choose. Just be a human being in the world doing everything. Let's see here. Amar says, "My superpower, I always said to be immortality and invulnerability." That's solid. You can't go wrong with that one. I'd probably pick the same one. What's sad is I would pick those powers so I could just spend more time making all of the art I want. that the multiple man one is more interesting to me because it means, hey, you're actually going out and living life and doing stuff. Whereas all I would do if I lived a long life is just spend more time making artwork. Well, I think it would amount to the same thing where I would allow myself to do other things and spend more time doing stuff that I don't necessarily do now. Sorry, I was in the middle of talking and then I was thinking about where adjusting the waistline on this particular part of the suit. Sometimes when you're live streaming, it's like you're drawing, and all of a sudden your brain is like, sorry, I need you right now. Let's see here. My buddy Vaughn says teleportation is hands down the greatest superpower. See, now we're going to get into a war of the superpowers. Teleportation, it depends on how far you can teleport, because the fact of the matter is teleporting from one room to another, that doesn't really hold a lot of interest for me. I mean, it'd be great if you're in a car accident, you can teleport out of the car before it explodes. But long distance teleportation, like teleporting from here to work instantly and not having to commute, that would be great. To be able to teleport from, I don't know, say one part of the United States to another, or from the United States to Europe or Africa or Asia, to be able to teleport intercontinentally and just see the world, be around people, experience people, that would be highly interesting to me. But I think it depends on what the limits of the teleportation are, because I seem to remember Nightcrawler from the X-Men, that he can, generally his teleportation is limited to line of sight. If he can see it, he can teleport to it. And he can teleport to places he can't see, but it always has an element of risk, because if he can't see where he's teleporting to, he might teleport into a solid object, into a brick wall or, you know, a steel beam or something, which would kill him. But the farther he teleports, the greater the distance it the greater the toll it takes on his body. So let's see here. Amar says, that is why I tend to make characters that are immortal and invulnerable. It says, also, my name means immortal in Sanskrit. That's pretty dope. There we go. It says invulnerability would allow me to go and do things I could not as a normal human being, like go to the bottom of the ocean, explore the depths of space, the center of the earth. Let's see here. Well, I mean, it also it doesn't, having those powers would also mean you would still need the actual technology to get to space or get to the center of the earth. I mean, we could just say, like, if you had Superman's power set, then yes, you could travel anywhere, do anything, explore anything. Let's see here. I think I'm going back up and looking at my reference. I'm going to add some lights. I'm trying to find things where it is reminiscent of the reference, but not exactly duplicating it. So I'm going to try and make like a bank of lights, low profile lights. So I don't want them to pop up like ears. They're more just sort of like I'm also thinking, how would I make this super simple? And that's something else to think about when you do character designs for all of you. You know, what looks cool versus what is going to be a pain in the ass to draw. And I wanted to look at the face that I had here because I kind of like the hair that I gave her, and I didn't want to necessarily do the exact hairstyle of the astronaut that I was inspired by. Let's see here. Art stuff says time freezing. For me, I need to work on more art and get more schoolwork done. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. All of those different things, the time freezing, the splitting into different people, the immortality, all of those things, I think, for artists tend to come down to having more time to do the thing that we love or not having to sacrifice. Like, for instance, I haven't played video games in years, specifically because of productivity, but I do enjoy gaming. I mean, I haven't had a console since the PS1, but I enjoy it. I miss it. I would like to be able to play games again. And that's one of the things that I kind of gave up when I got really serious about artwork. Music. I am by no means a musician, but I used to dabble with a guitar. I still own a guitar. There were a couple of songs I learned how to play by tablature and just being able to pick them out. But being able to pick up music as a hobby again, these are all things that freezing time or some form of life extension would allow me to spend more time doing. Let's see here. Amar says, finding out cures for disease with all the time you can find out how to create other abilities. And he says, Vandal Savage is also a great testament to these abilities. Oddly enough, I'm not as enriched in the DC universe. I'm much more of a Marvel kid. So I know Vandal Savage was a villain in the DC universe, but I've never read a comic featuring him. I can't remember if he was a Justice League villain or whether he was a villain for a specific member of the Justice League. I just know his name. And Amar also says, time gives you the ability to discover and create the tech to discover those areas. You would also have time to become an expert on everything. And you also get people like Ra's al Ghul who would just use that time to figure out how to test humanity and prepare us for the survival of the fittest, as it were. So when I'm sketching roughly, I have found that what works really well for me is to use a super light pencil as opposed to working at a low opacity. and then just go in slightly darker when I'm ready to refine details. Give her a slightly larger hair. Just go out a little bit more. Not a full-on afro, but just bigger and chunkier. Let's see here. James is in the chat. He says, "An astronaut? Yes. I'm working on a short story about an astronaut who gets locked out of her space station." And so I'm just sort of like working on character designs. Got some reference up here in my document, and I'm just sort of sketching out what I kind of want her spacesuit to look like. I'm not intentionally trying to do this, but the roundness of the face that I have right here kind of reminds me of Katsutiro Otomo, the director of Akira. Let's see here. And James also says, yeah, I use lighter lines for construction, and also agrees. Akira is excellent. I'm curious who here has not seen Akira yet, because I haven't watched it in several years, but it is a classic, and it is worth me going back and rewatching. And sadly, I will admit, in terms of the actual manga, I have only read the first volume. And it is one of the greatest comics I've ever read, but I haven't gone back and gotten that. I kind of want to get that box set, the Akira Club box set, where it has like all 6 volumes in a nice slipcase. But I have so many books that I have not read yet that I've held off on getting it. And it's not available to read digitally anywhere. So, but at some point, I really would like to read the manga, because my understanding is that the movie itself only really covers sort of like maybe the first half of the story. Let's see here. And James says, I haven't read the whole run of Cerebus myself, but I think that's mostly due to how thick the books are and how much space I have. I agree with you there. Those books are massive. Honestly, I still feel like I read all the way up to probably the last 2 volumes. And by the time we got down to the last 2, I really stopped. Like, it just stopped being compelling to me. And I was only reading just to say that I read all the way to the end. And I liked a lot of it, even some of the later stuff that gets a little weird. Um, and that's saying something considering how weird Cerebus is. But I did buy the final issue and I read that. You know what? It's possible. I think I actually may have read the entire series and bought the last volume and read that too, and I just didn't really remember it because it didn't seem to do a lot for me. Cerebus is a great series, but I really feel like if you read up through and including Jaka's story, which I think those are like maybe the first 5 or 6 volumes, like I feel like by the time you get to volume 8, you're good. Like I feel like you get the best of what it has to offer in like those first 8 volumes. You know, if someone wanted to read the whole thing, I wouldn't say don't read it. But for me, that those first 8 volumes, particularly, I mean, honestly, if you just wanted to say what's the best, I would just read Church and State. Like if you just wanted to say, all right, what is the best of Cerebus? Church and State volumes 1 and 2, plus High Society. High Society and Church and State, those to me are like the must reads. Let's see here. James mentions, the library might have some copies. And he says, Guys is fun, but I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's not that the later ones are bad. It's just that they go off into a certain level of esoteric storytelling that is not for everyone. And I think that if you really, really dig where Dave Sim is going, then go for it. To be honest, what I've been waiting for, and I haven't been able to find it, are collections of his the series he was doing afterwards called I think it was called Sourpuss, but it was sort of a retelling of the history of I think like 50s and 60s era illustration in the United States. And just him like going through, and you can see his mastery in that he's able to imitate the styles of all these different masterful pen and ink illustrators. Or Glamourpuss, yes, Glamourpuss. James is right there. He's on top with it. Glamourpuss. That's the Dave Sims series. That one to me was super interesting, and I was buying it in single issues that he was only selling from his website. And I think I got like maybe the first 3 or 4, and after that I kind of fell off from it. But that's something that maybe he's done a collected edition by now, and I should probably go and look for it. But at this point, I'm so buried in books to read that I've kind of just been like, all right, unless it's something that really distinctly calls to me, I'm okay on picking up new books. I'm just trying to work my way through my backlog. So I'm sort of jumping back and forth between that first head that I drew and going back over the suit design. Now the thing with this suit is I really should not be taking as long drawing this as I am, because what I should do is just draw the suit over and over again quickly until I get a sense of what is going to be easy for me to draw. It's going to be easy for me to draw quickly. What are the details that I need to eliminate? Yeah, this suit needs to be streamlined. James says, right, being buried can be overwhelming. Well, for a number of years, the way I used to consume books is I would just, if I was at a comic convention or if I stopped by a comic book shop, I would just pick up whatever was something that I said, oh, I'd like to read this at some point. And I'd pick up a volume of Saga, pick up a volume of The Sixth Gun, pick up a volume of Robert Kirkman's Invincible. Just whatever sounds interesting, or something that I'm like, I've heard good things, I want to read this, or I like other work this creator has done, then I just pick it up. Or if I just happen to look at a book and I'm like, oh, I like the artwork on this. I am still very much somebody who would pick up a book just because the art looks cool or the premise sounds cool. And my thinking for many years has been, I get that first volume and then I love it and I'll just read through the whole thing when I have a chance. And what invariably happens is I get that first volume, I read it, and then I just never have time to go back and read the rest. And then I just have all these volume ones laying around. Or then it got to the point where I just didn't have enough time to stay on top of even reading those. And then I just have a bunch of unread comics, which is where I'm at now, which is I just have this library full of books where well, patrons have seen it because I have a video on my my Patreon where I show my library, and it's like a room that's wall to wall bookshelves, and I love that room. I've probably only read 2/3 of the books that are there, and at some point I need to go through and clear out some of the books that I've read that I'm not going to read again. Donate some to the library. But there's a lot of stuff in there that I have not read. And that is the reason why I'm slowing more and more in terms of like the stuff that I pick up. Also there's stuff that where I backed Kickstarters, and at first it was like, oh, I really like this creator and I want to pick up this book. And then it got to the point where I switched to backing just for digital rewards because I was like, I don't have room for the physical books. Of course, now I'm also starting to fill up in terms of PDFs that I haven't read. So at a certain point, I just got to the point where if somebody I like is running a Kickstarter, I started pledging just to help fund their book and with no reward. Because I'm just like, I don't have room for the actual physical rewards. I don't have time to read them. And I'm just like, I want this book to exist and I want this person to succeed. So all right, I kind of like this look. Simple enough that I could redraw it over and over again fast. Let's see here. James says, yeah, you can definitely go down a rabbit hole with a creator's work. You can definitely tell who's been around in the comics world. And he also says, I never bothered with physical rewards, but they're pretty cool on Kickstarter and the like. Well, I mean, for me, interestingly enough, as somebody who at some point I'm going to run a Kickstarter campaign, I would like to just see, sometimes I would back people's projects because I just want to see what their reward looks like, how they packaged it, how they shipped it, what the physical form for this thing looked like, to kind of get a sense of what I'm going to be doing for my own projects. But I think for a lot of them, it really is like I'm just backing something that I want to read. Like for a long time, I've been backing the How to Think When You Draw from the Etherington Brothers, that blog. that they've been doing a great series of books that they're just publishing through Kickstarter. And I remember the time that they ran the first one, I didn't back the first one. And then my boss at the time showed up at work with the book from the Kickstarter campaign, and he was showing it to me, and I was handing it, and I was like, yeah, man, I done messed up. I messed up. I should have been on this, and I messed up. Very good looking, beautiful book, full of great drawing tips. Let's see here. Let me play with a few different faces. Oops, that is too light. I'm trying to give her sort of a rounder head than I usually draw. I tend to draw elongated and very angular. Let's see here. James said, my copy of Joe Frankenstein came with a bookmark and a sticker. I like stuff like that. It's funny. I backed a Kickstarter for Flesk Publishing, the people that do, what is it? They took over the publishing for the Spectrum art books. They had a Kickstarter campaign. I'm going to switch the camera real quick. They had a Kickstarter campaign for a Franklin Booth book. And if you're not, hang on, I have to turn off my light so you can see this in all its proper glory. But Franklin Booth was an early American illustrator. And if you look at stuff like Frank Cho's work or anybody that has a lot of hatching and detail, I would say the Frankenstein thing is what made me think of it, because also from the studio did that great Frankenstein. Why am I blanking on the name? He's one of the best. Barry Wrightson. Yeah, one of the best artists in comics history. Anyway, Barry Wrightson is another guy who is, I would definitely say, was influenced by Franklin Booth. Anyway, I backed that Kickstarter campaign because I've been looking for a really good Franklin Booth book. And there was only one that was published, I don't know, maybe in the 60s or 70s, and was never reprinted. So you could never find it, or it was one of those books where they were selling it for like $300 or $500. So when this Kickstarter campaign came out, I was like, no, I am jumping on that. And it came with a bunch of really nice prints, as well as I think like 4 bookmarks. It was like 4 prints and 4 bookmarks. Really, really nice book, large hardcover. And I could see why you would kickstart a book like that, because it's a very expensive production. And the whole thing of the Kickstarter is that it works like a pre-order. And I could see them not, even though they probably knew their market well enough that they knew it would sell, you don't want to go in and spend that much money on producing a very large, expensive book without having the funds covered. So I can see that being a situation where Kickstarter very much made the production of the book possible. So the only thing in this different version I'm doing now is her ears are a little bit larger, her head's a little bit rounder, but in my first sketch, I gave her sort of dot eyes, and I think I actually like the dot eyes more than the more realistic eyes. Kind of the Franco-Belgian comics, the Tintin, Hergé style. I kind of like those eyes for this. Instead of drawing her nostrils, I'm just giving her a little bit of a broader nose and just drawing the base of it. I don't want her to look frowny. I'm just sort of working out her face. Let's see here. James says, I'll have to play with the dot eyes. Interestingly enough, if you have a chance, look up the cartoonist Hergé. It's Hergé, and I believe there's an accent over the E. But he does a very famous comic in the European market called Tintin. They made it. Steven Spielberg made a film of it. But he's not famous for He's famous for being a great cartoonist and telling great stories. But his main character Tintin has these little dot eyes that are very, very expressive while having a minimal amount of actual line art. Kind of similar to if you've ever seen, there's a piece of film from Alfred Hitchcock where he talks about storytelling and how the viewer interprets and kind of fills in with their mind what the intent of the artist is, depending on the context. So he does a thing where he shows a person with the same expression, just kind of a looking, kind of longing look, and they show him, and then he cuts, he edits, he shows a short, just a clip of film where he shows that person, and he cuts to a baby carriage or a family with a baby, and then cuts back to the guy, and you're like, oh, that's so sweet. Like he's looking at the baby at longingly or lovingly, and you're like, what a sweet old man. And then he shows you the same clip, the exact same expression, but then he cuts to like a girl and a young woman in a short skirt, and cuts back, and now it looks like he's leering at her. And you're like, oh, this guy is like a dirty old man. He's kind of a lech. And I bring that up only in the sense that these dot eyes, I think, function the same way, where you don't have to capture the expression exactly. They're limited. They're so open and so varied that if you just put the character in a scary context, these eyes will read as scared. If you put them in a safe and loving environment, then they will read as very thoughtful. If you put them in a club, they look like somebody who's partying and getting their drink on and having a good time. So I think that is an advantage of having these dot eyes. And also, you don't necessarily have to use exclusively one or the other. Like I've seen artists like Stuart Immonen. He had a long run. He's done a lot of stuff with Brian Michael Bendis. I think he was the artist on his run on the new X-Men. He also did some work on Ultimate Spider-Man. He drew Next Wave with Warren Ellis. He's drawn so many things. But anyway, he is an artist who is extremely versatile. And I've noticed that depending on the sequence in the book, he will switch from more illustrative eyes like what's above to the dot eyes like this. So he'll have the same character, but in a certain context, he'll draw them with dot eyes. And I think that's really interesting to change up how you're rendering the character depending on your storytelling needs of the moment. So it doesn't have to be the same type of eyes throughout the entire comic. Let's see here. So we are at about 50 minutes here. And I still have a lot of work to do in terms of designing this character, because what I had intended was simply to draw a 3/4 front and a 3/4 back. But I do think that before even drawing that, it's important to just do a sheet of scribbles of the character. Work on the silhouette, work on what details I want to eliminate versus details that I want to refine or keep. And I think it's important to do that before doing a formal character sheet. Because it gives you a sense of what is this character going to be like to draw if you're doing an animation, if you're doing a storyboard, if you're doing a full comic. Having a sense of what you want out of that character when you want to be able to draw them quickly over and over. And I think I need to take these very angular shapes that I have and just start rounding them for the hair. So all I'm doing is I'm kind of taking the same lines that I have, but I'm just curving them out more. Switch. I'm kind of going to just leap back and forth between heads and body. So let's see now. Hand reaching that way. So just a simple stick figure, helmet sticking out. And I like this idea of having it like a sphere that's pretty much resting on the shoulders of the suit, and then just has a neck that comes down. Like I like that for the shape language of the suit. think for the size of this torso, I made these arms a bit too thick. I've got to thin them down a little bit. What threw me is just how massive the helmet is. Let's see here. Amar says, outside the writing itself, finding a way to design characters to simplify them enough to still give the character design you intend is a struggle. He says, deciding how far to go. I'm currently trying to decide the final look of the main three characters of my current universe for comics. I would like the style to also mirror or be similar if it gets to the point of being animated. By that could be me overthinking it. He says, I just need to do as I did the first comic years ago and just get it done and move on. This will be truly telling the direction I will go from here on that journey. You know, what's funny is I am a firm believer that until you have spent a number of years completing projects, so it's not just how many years you've been drawing, but until you've like published multiple books or completed multiple animated shorts, whatever it is, the medium that you plan to make your work in, I do feel that we're limited in how much we can actually direct our styles. And I think that our styles come from the act of making the thing. We have to see what happens when we have to draw a character over and over again. Like you said, like, from doing your first comic, I think that trying to overthink or decide, oh, this is the style and this is the look, whatever you decide, it's still going to change when you spend hours, drawing the thing. So for me, that's why the approach I'm taking here is, let me just see what it looks like if I just draw the character. If I think about the story that I want to tell and just draw poses and expressions and just see what comes out of me, to me, what I naturally gravitate to, that is the look. That doesn't mean that an artist should not impose their will over that. I think that we very much can and should. But I think that the framework for what we impose and how should definitely be done through the lens of what is the path of least resistance for us. Like, what is going to, path of least resistance is the wrong word, but what is naturally going to come out of your pencil or your stylus when you're trying to crank out, 3 or 4 pages a week, or if you're trying to crank out a bunch of boards for an animated film and you're just drawing panel after panel after panel. I think figuring out what looks good when you're working that quickly and figuring out what is pleasing to you, but also effective time-wise, that is where you get your style. Your style sort of chooses itself. And you may draw something very quickly and you're like, oh, I have discovered something that works. Or you may draw something very quickly and go, oh, I hate that. That's not what I want my work to look like. Then that's where you come back and you work and you refine it until you do eventually reach that equilibrium or that balance between speed and an aesthetic that pleases you. Go back up and look at that. Putting those lights on the side. I think that those lights on the side are just going to be the form of a little curved box. Let's see here. Graffiti University Comics says, great teaching. That is kind of you to say. It's very thoughtful. Thank you. I just try to share what's been helping me and getting me through this this creative struggle that we all go through. I was going to draw a backpack on top of her, but I think what I'm going to do is finish out this pose as this, loosely, and then just drag it over and then put the backpack on top, because that is a beauty of working digital, is just being able to draw something, drag it over, duplicate it, and do some edits to it. Let's see here. So Amar says, I feel like most of the time I'm spending too much time redrawing and figuring out the best and most appealing version of that character. Let's see. He says, I do tend to do that at times with specific drawing as well. Like I've been doing that with fan art. He says, as I was doing other things, I need to take the same approach, just get it done and move on. But part of me feels if I have just got all 15 of the other issues done based on our conversations over the past almost 5 years, I would have ended up with completed projects. But even with them being completed, I would not be happy with them. Well, I completely agree with you, and I think that's part of the struggle. Like when you and I have talked about perfectionism, and I have admitted that I am a perfectionist, but I think that that's important, that we spend so much time on these projects that we write and draw. We want to be happy with them. And that is, finding that balance is a struggle to make something that is both good, fast, and satisfying. Generally, for me, the faster I draw, the less satisfied I am with my work. And I have yet to find a style or a workflow where I'm producing work quickly and I'm satisfied. What usually happens is I'll start drawing something and I'll see errors or mistakes, or it just doesn't look like what I originally pictured in my head. And I'll redraw and I'll fix it. And I'll say, oh, I tried to draw this without reference and I really need to go get reference. And I have this whole process that I go through where at first I try to just work quickly. And then when that fails, I go down my list of things that usually help me fix a drawing that isn't working. Reference being the number one. But I think that when you mentioned before about your characters, not necessarily looking the way that you want and not being satisfied, I've seen your model sheets and I've seen you just, working on developing the characters. But I think that idea of the same way that a lot of animators will go through and they will do not just model sheets, but they'll do expression sheets where they just fill a page with their character making different faces and different expressions. I think that doing the same equivalent, but for the entire body, like doing a sheet of gestures of the character, maybe 2 or 3 sheets where you just draw the character punch, kick, picking a flower, shivering from the cold, starting a fire, cooking a meal, drinking a coffee, like just thinking of every single thing, whether they're in your story or not, that you could have your character do, and just filling a sheet with the character doing those things. I think that that really helps with refining the character's look and feel. And I say that with the idea that I probably should do that with this. This sheet, I was going to sort of alternate between the character going through some poses and faces. But in the end, what will probably work best is to just do a separate sheet of both. This is almost like, I feel like it's a warm-up for doing a expression sheet of the character's face, as well as doing a sheet of expressive poses. And given that we should be working quickly, or that I should be working quickly, maybe it's okay to do a warm-up that's a combination of expression and poses, and then just use that as a jumping off point for the next state, the next sheet. The sheets that have the individual, I've got one sheet that's got a combination, and then another sheet that's just facial expressions, and then another sheet that's just physical poses. It's almost like I'm trying to let the story or just the character's acting influence the character design. I mean, I will tell you that after I was working on Morningstar for a number of years, I really felt like the best way to do character designs was to thumbnail the entire graphic novel, the whole series from beginning to end. And then at the end, then go back and draw those thumbnails, or draw the actual character designs before drawing the actual finished pages. And that sounds very counterintuitive, but my point is what I was saying before, is by drawing the character with a rough, vague idea, but thumbnailing out all of the actions and all the stuff that they're going to do, then when the time comes to do character designs, I can come back and just look at them and say, oh, wait, they are this, they're that. I need to change this element, add that element. I don't know. I'm just talking out of my head here. Let's see here. See here. Amar says, I feel like I could have completed them if I really wanted to. It maybe is an excuse, but I feel like I'm lacking the environments I want to see in my drawings. In addition to the characters, see them as I would in my dream mind and drawing into that reality. Well, you know what's funny right there is, given your knowledge of 3D, I'm surprised you don't just find a bunch of 3D, like free 3D models, like on TurboSquid or something. Just pose them at the angle that you need for your story, and then just just trace the models and just add whatever details you want for your specific story. That seems like that would be a pretty quick way to get backgrounds that are as light in detail or as complicated in detail as you want or as you need while utilizing the skills that you already excel at in terms of your knowledge of 3D. I mean, I've thought about using Unreal Engine, except for the fact that I don't want to have to sit and learn a whole new program. But using Unreal Engine and just whatever scene I have, just drop it in an environment, turn it the angle I need, save a screenshot, drop it into my comic. And maybe even drop it in and not even retrace the line art, but maybe just put in the values, so like the shadow shapes of whatever the environment is, and do it all in tone, kind of like a toon shaded look. Like maybe just drop toon shaded backgrounds into my comics and not even really have to do much. But I mean, I feel like you would probably be able to do that faster than I would, because you're already much farther along in terms of using Blender and using 3D in your work than I am. But I also don't know how realistic that is in terms of being how easy or difficult that would be. Let's see here. Amar says, in addition to characters, see them as I would in my... Oh, I already read that one. You said, because most of the stories will write themselves since I plotted them out over 5 years, but the worlds, places, and universes they travel to can be a bit overwhelming. Well, environment design is definitely not one of my strengths. And I've been trying to spend more time drawing environments and looking at them, looking at good art books on it. I know I've mentioned multiple times on this live stream on my YouTube channel, I've mentioned that book, The Skillful Huntsman. It's from Design Studio Press, and it's Art Center instructor Scott Robertson, along with, I believe, 4 of his students working through visual development for a Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale. And in that, you see 4 different artists do a series of character designs, weapon designs, vehicle designs, environment designs. And that is one of the best books I can recommend for anyone who's struggling with visual world building, because you get to see the process of 4 different artists working on the same story, but you see how each one of them approaches it differently, has a different take, different executions. And even when they're using the similar approach in terms of working on the silhouettes of characters before even getting into detail, they all bring their own personal flavor to it. So I highly recommend looking at that. I mean, Amar, I'm curious what your personal collection of art books are, because to me, a good collection of books like the Art of Star Wars books, the Art of the Spider-Verse, Art of Black Panther, which that book has been sold out for years and you can't get it, and I don't think they're going to reprint it, so it's like a collector's item. But getting the art of books of films, to me, has been very invaluable in understanding the process. So I don't excel at environment design and visual word building. That's not my strength. I really stick to storytelling and character design. But when it comes to the fact of you're slowing down, you're taking too long on it, you feel like you may be dragging your feet, you should just get it done. Looking at how other people that were doing it for a film production and had to push it forward, and seeing how they evolve it. I think the bet for most things, seeing how someone else did something you're struggling with is one of the most useful tools, because you can just look at it and say, oh, let me just try this process. And you try it, and there's things that work for you, things that don't. And then, like everything, you toss out what doesn't work, you keep what does, and you build your own personal toolkit for world building or environment design or character design, whatever the stage is. But I think having your own personal reference library I think that's essential to every artist. And even if it's not necessarily physical books, I definitely think everyone should have at least a couple of really, really good books on film design or character design or concept design, from specific movies or TVs that are really influential to them. But in addition to that, just having, whether it's a Pinterest board, artists on ArtStation that you follow, all those things are useful. But having a reference library to go back to for everything you might struggle with, you have to have that. Otherwise, trying to do this out of your own head and out of your imagination, you'll drown. I think that might be an important thing to, Anyway, let me see. I think you responded to that already. Let's see here. First, art stuff says, I've been trying to get a comic I've been writing, and I've been going off the path I had in my head, but the current one is still good. Do you have any advice to link them up? Yes. I would work on an ending. And it doesn't have to be that it's the end of your entire story, but let's say that you were going to do like a 4-issue miniseries. What I would say is look at both of your stories that you have, or where it's gone off in different paths, and figure out what is the ending. And maybe it's something where the story starts with what your original outline was. In the middle, it goes into where the path veers off, and at the end, it comes back to the original ending you had. Or maybe it starts with the original, goes into the new one, comes back to the original, and then it ends with the ending for where the path went off. But if you can figure out how you want to end your story, then it's just a matter of looking at it and say, well, what logically has to happen to get from beat to beat to beat? So if you can look at it, if you say, all right, it's going to be a 4-issue miniseries or an 8-issue miniseries, and I definitely recommend shorter rather than longer. If you're doing 1 issue, that's even best because that's just a short story. Then you might just want to look at that and say, all right, what happened? You just create a numbered list, like 1 through 20 or 1 through 22, like however many pages your comic is going to be. And you sit down, and on that, you limit yourself to 1 sentence. And you say, this is what happens on this page. And you just fill out that list. And so you have like all your pages, and you have a description of what happens in your story. Now, you're probably not going to be happy with that list when you first write it. Leave that list. Don't keep cutting and pasting and deleting. Leave that list and then start another list. And from there, rewrite. So you can go back and look at your first draft and your second draft and compare them. And just keep rewriting that list and writing different drafts until you have a page list, kind of like that's your outline of your comic that tells you everything that's going to happen on each page, and you're happy with it. You're fulfilled. You like the story. From there, that to me, that seems like the best way to resolve this whole difference between where you started with your story versus the path you veered off on. So hopefully that is helpful. Maybe give that a shot. Let's see here. Amar says, yes, I will work on adding that as well. He said, that's why I've been trying to do a little animation of the lead characters, Snow and Lilith, in my comic. I think, yeah, going through and doing some animations, that'll definitely force you to work out how the character is really going to look and move and exist. He says, true, I'm my own worst enemy to the productivity of my final products. Don't be too hard on yourself. You've seen how long it takes me to get through finishing an entire comic. And I think that while we live in a hustle culture where everyone's just like crank out, stay up all night, give up, extra hours of sleep, get up at 4 a.m. and do all this. I think that there's a certain point at which we have to balance self-care and mental sanity with and health with productivity. And sometimes I think that when the energy is flowing, you need to put the pedal to the metal and push it out. But I think you also have to be aware of not burning yourself out or making yourself sick. And it is a balance that every creative person struggles with, because all of us want to just drive 24/7. And the people who can't drive 24/7 beat themselves up about it. The people who do drive 24/7 run themselves into the ground and either deal with burnout or health issues. There is no good answer to that question and that struggle. There isn't. You always feel like you're either slacking off or burning yourself out. And it's just a matter of trying to thread that needle and know when to push and when to pull back. And that's knowing yourself and knowing what you're willing to sacrifice. Some people are willing to sacrifice their health to get a bunch of stuff done. And for many years, I was too. Now I have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and I'm trying to work on maintaining my health, getting enough exercise. Let's see here. Amar says, I could have I could have more completed if I spent more time targeting the problems, spend less time thinking of them as problems. Right on that. I completely agree with that. I'm right there with you on that. Let's see here. He says, I will work on that as well. And he says, it's limited because of the space I have available in the apartment I live in. I did used to look at those books, and they're at the library as well. He says, so that's something I need to dive deeper into. I mean, for me, I think that having a physical library that you can go visit, like your local library, that's plenty. If the library has a great collection of art books, what I'm saying is, it's almost as even if you live in like a 1-bedroom apartment or a studio, if you were to say, all right, if I'm just gonna have 2 or 3 books on this subject, then just get like those best books. Like if I had to get rid of all of my books about concept artwork, then what I would probably keep is off the top of my head, it would be that Scott Robertson book that I mentioned, The Skillful Huntsman. It would be the Art of Attack of the Clones from Star Wars, the second one, the Attack of the Clones. I know that a lot of people didn't really like the movie Attack of the Clones, but as far as the Art of Star Wars books, and I have several and I've owned several, to me, the Attack of the Clones one is one of the best for visual development. And then for 3, it would probably be, again, going to Star Wars. My wife recently got me the Mandalorian Season 1 art book as a birthday present. And that book is fantastic. And I really love it. And the fact that it's one where I've seen every episode and it really resonates, and it's very well written in terms of anecdotes and little tidbits of thoughts on how the actual designers, whether it's the actual specific artist that drew a piece, whether it's commentary from Jon Favreau or Dave Filoni, from the directors as well, the directors that actually shot the episodes. All of the commentary is incredibly insightful in terms of what decisions they made and why, things that they thought were good concepts, but they had to change it for practical reasons. All of that's fantastic. So those 3 books would probably be my desert island. And what I'm suggesting is a desert island library. If you've got, there's times when I've lived in very small apartments and didn't have space for as many books as I wanted. And I think that it's important to have a desert island library where it's like, okay, those having good reference art books is just as important as having the software that you need for your computer device, having the physical pencils that you draw with or brushes that work. The art books and the reference books that you have, those are part of the tools of creativity. They're just as important as the things you use to draw and paint with. And maybe only have space for one desert island concept art book, and then it's a bunch of PDFs, or a reference file on your computer, or maybe you get books you check out for your library, and maybe you snap some photos of important pages for your own personal reference, pages that are really illustrate the whatever element, like maybe it's environment design or vehicle design. You just snap some reference images. Let's see here. Oh, Amar mentions Star Wars and The Matrix are 2 of the ones I would like to get and explore. I have the Art of the Matrix, and that book is also fantastic. I probably have maybe too many art of books in the sense that I have a lot that I don't necessarily open that often. I think certainly the fact that I already have one Star Wars book, believe it or not, as great as I think the Attack of the Clones book is, I would probably give up the Attack of the Clones book because my wife gave me the Mandalorian book. So that one has emotional needs. So I would keep the Mandalorian, the Skillful Huntsman, and then maybe I would throw in either the Art of the Matrix, or I really like the book for the Art of District 9. That book is pretty badass too. Let's see here. Amar says, that That's also what I do as well. That's helpful for each book story that I work on. What is the incident, complication, crisis, climax, and resolution? He says hopes that helps with what Jeremy said to add art stuff. So he was also adding on. So for art stuff, working on your story, just cutting it down to what is the inciting incident, what's the complication, the crisis, and climax and resolution. And Amar says, I write out one sentence for each of those 5 elements for the story I'm working on. And I see Omar here, and he says, hey, Jeremy. Hey, Omar. So I notice that we've been talking, and we got into some storytelling talk, which is all good and always good to dig into and talk about process. And writing is just as much of the process as the drawing. But on that note, I think we're going to wrap up the stream here. So, I got a little bit of thumbnailing, rough character design here, working on the spacesuit. I'm going to end up filling this out, doing some more just poses and expression sheets, and then I'll work on doing a proper turnaround for this character. So who knows? Maybe I'll still be working on this next week, and we'll do a little bit more visual development and character design on next week as well. But anyway, on that note, we're going to wrap it up here. Let's see here. And Art Stuff also says, thanks. I've been stuck on this comic for a few weeks now. I think Art Stuff, you had commented before on my my writing video. I might be wrong, but if you haven't seen it, then definitely go back and watch that. If you just search for writing on my YouTube channel, you'll find a video that I have where I should walk you through my writing process for writing a comic from beginning to end. And it's basically my outlining and structure process. I have times where I struggle with my own writing now, and I will go back and I will rewatch a video that I made to remind me to get back down to the basics. So of everything I've made and put out online, that I think has been the thing that's been the most useful tool for my fellow creatives. So I definitely encourage you to go check that video out as well. And Amar also wishes you luck on this project. You know what? Whether he's wishing it to Art Stuff or whether he's wishing it to me, I appreciate the wish to luck as well. But I think that, for Art Stuff, definitely good luck with your project. I wanted to pass that on. Amar is always encouraging the creative community here on this channel. So I always appreciate his input. On that note, if you enjoy these live streams and you would like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. And these live streams are 2.5, 3 hours long. We call them Art Book Study Group, where we dig into some of the best art books around and do deep dives and try to suck out all the knowledge we can. We've been doing a long-running series on Walt Reed's The Figure. It's one of the best books I've seen on the fundamentals of drawing the figure. And we just go through page by page and do studies from it, discuss it, talk about different aspects, and try to master those fundamentals, because you're always working on improving your fundamentals. I know that I am. So for as little as $2 a month, you get access to all of the new ones. And you can also get access to the backlog of all the videos. There's hundreds of hours of Art Book Study Group for you to check out and watch as well. We have somewhere we've done George Bridgman, Ken Holtgren doing some animal drawing. There's tons for you guys to check out. It's patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you would like to get, I always keep forgetting to tell people, hit the like button, hit the share button, pass it on. If there's somebody you think that would enjoy these videos, definitely please forward it to them. I need to start saying that at the start of the stream. I keep forgetting. Anyways, newsletter. If you'd like to sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net, you will get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively. Definitely go check that out. And to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up my first graphic novel. Eye of the Gods. It's a standalone psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can pick up my most recent project, Morningstar, Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. It is an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains the conclusion to the series, issues 5 through 8. Both have extensive back matter, script excerpts, thumbnails, page layouts, character design, photo reference, and more. There are book flip-throughs on the homepage of my YouTube channel. So if you want to follow, links in the description. You can head over there and actually check out the book, see what's inside before you pick it up. All right, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out, for all the great conversation, spending time. I greatly appreciate it. That's it for now. Go be creative.